You ever wonder if the problems we're dealing with today are really all that new? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into a letter written almost 2,000 years ago that hits on one of the biggest questions we all face. We're going to look at the first epistle of John and find some, well, surprisingly practical answers. How should we live? I mean, that question hits home for everyone, doesn't it? It cuts right through time, through culture, all our different circumstances. And for John, the guy who wrote this letter, this wasn't just some philosophical thought experiment. He was answering it for a community that was in a real crisis. See, this letter wasn't written in some quiet, peaceful library. No, it was an urgent response to a huge problem. The early church was getting flooded with what you might call first-century fake news, these really compelling but totally false ideas about who Jesus was and what it meant to actually follow him. So, to really get John's answer, we first have to understand the crisis he was dealing with. I mean, what was this whole battle of ideas about? Let's take a closer look. Okay, so the main opposing viewpoint actually had a name: Gnosticism. This was an early Christian heresy that was being pushed by these super charismatic teachers, guys like Cerinthus. They were basically telling people, hey, that version of Christianity you learned, that's just the beginner's course. We have the secret knowledge, the inside scoop you need for the real truth. And this slide right here, it just lays out the whole conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the Gnostics. They're saying salvation comes from some secret knowledge. But on the other side, you have John, who's insisting, no, it's through faith in Christ. The Gnostics were teaching that Jesus was just a regular guy who got some divine power for a little while. John's like, nope, Jesus is God. And maybe the most important point for our big question, the Gnostics argue that what you do with your body, your physical life, is totally irrelevant. John's response? Absolutely not. How you live righteous living is the essential evidence of a real faith. So against that whole backdrop of confusion and fake news, John provides a really clear answer. Let's look at his foundational response to that big question. How should we live? Now this is the key. You gotta get this. John's starting point isn't a to-do list. It's not about checking off boxes. It's all about a relationship, a state of being that he calls abiding in Christ. This is the absolute core of his entire argument. You know, abide might sound like a kind of old, stuffy word, but the concept is so powerful. It literally means to dwell somewhere, to set up a permanent home. John is saying that our home base, our true north, our source of life, is our union with Christ himself. It's the place you truly belong. And get this story from the source material just makes the idea of abiding so practical. The speaker, Glenn Barry Schenkke, shares how, as a young guy, he was always getting worked up about the failures of other Christians, and his minister gave him this amazing advice: take your eyes off them and just look at Christ. He says that simple focus has saved his bacon over and over again. Now, that is abiding in action. So what's the result of living this way, of abiding? Well, according to John, there are two really clear outcomes. First, it gives you confidence when you think about the future, not shame. And second, it naturally leads to a life that practices righteousness, which he calls the dead giveaway, the absolute sign that you've been born of God. Okay, but why? Why should we live this way? What's the fuel in the tank for this kind of life? Well, that brings us to the ultimate motivation behind it all, and believe me, it is a powerful one. John basically asks, what's the single greatest reason in the whole world to live this way? And it's not what you might think. It's not about being afraid of punishment or trying to earn brownie points with God. It's something way, way deeper. And here it is, straight from the letter. John says, just stop for a second and really look at this love. Try to wrap your head around it. It's a love so big, so transformative, that it gives us a new name, a new family, children of God. And that is the core motivation right there. See, the Christian life isn't some self-improvement project to try and become a good person. It's all about responding to the mind-blowing reality that through this incredible love, you've been given a completely new identity. It's a gift you receive, not a status you have to go out and earn. So if this new identity is for real, what does it actually look like in practice? In our last section here, we're going to explore the observable evidence. You could call it the mark of a Christian. To understand the mark of a Christian, John first defines what they're turning away from, and he uses a very specific word for sin: lawlessness. Now, this isn't just about breaking a rule here or there. It's a deep-down rejection of God's character and his good design for how life is meant to be lived. And this leads us to a verse that honestly has shaken a lot of people. Right on the surface, it sounds like it's saying a true Christian will be perfect. that they'll never sin, which we all know is not our daily experience. So, what on earth is John actually saying here? Let's figure it out. The wording here is everything. An older translation like the King James Version sounds really absolute, doth not commit sin. But more modern translations like the ESV, they do a better job of capturing the nuance of the original Greek language. The idea isn't about committing a single act of sin. It's about making a practice of sinning, living in a continuous, ongoing pattern of lawlessness. The scholar F.F. Bruce gives this fantastic analogy to help explain it. Imagine a new student at a really prestigious school. He breaks a rule, and the headmaster tells him, "That isn't done here." Now, obviously, it was just done. He literally just did it. But the point of the correction is that that kind of behavior is totally incompatible with what it means to be a member of that school. In the exact same way, John is saying a lifestyle of sin is now incompatible with the new identity you have as a child of God. And this right here brings us to the final crucial distinction. For John, living a righteous life is not the stuff you do to become a Christian, to earn your way into God's family. No, it's the natural, expected family resemblance that just flows out of the fact that you're already in the family. It's the evidence, not the cause. So, after walking through this 2,000-year-old letter, here's where we land. The answer to how should we live? It's not a list of rules. It's a radical new identity, given out of pure love, that's centered on abiding in Christ. And that identity fundamentally changes everything about the direction and practice of your life. Which leaves us with one last question to kind of chew on. In a world that's just full of competing claims and different beliefs, what does it really mean for John to argue that the ultimate evidence of truth is found not just in what you say you believe, but in the very fabric of how you actually live?